Hello and welcome back to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. On today's broadcast, we're going to continue a discussion about ranked choice voting, an alternate way to cast ballots in elections. On the line today, Mariana Garcia from the Old State House in Hartford and Joseph Call from the University of the South, the expert on the issue of ranked choice voting.
The potential benefit of RCV is increasing voter turnout. This relates back to this increased ability because we know that, again, American elections tend to be pretty negative. Some people might not want to vote because they don't want to participate in a negative system. However, if you do away with some of that negativity, people might be more willing to cast a ballot. At the same time, it may increase turnout because candidates try to reach out to more voters. Again, I want to have Mariana's voters list me second, and so I'm not just, mobilizing my own voters, I'm mobilizing other candidates' voters to rank me second or third or so on. So these are all potential benefits of ranked choice voting, but there are also some potential drawbacks. So Mariana, we have a slight issue here where this picture should have appeared differently. Is there a way to fix that? Can I just share my screen?
Yeah. Let's see. Apologies for the issue. Let's see.
Sorry about that. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Animations, what are you going to do? So the first kind of potential drawback of ranked choice voting is that it might be more difficult for voters to rank candidates. So if we have this ranked choice voting ballot, this demonstration ballot that we saw earlier, if I again wanted Naomi Jackson as my first candidate, I fill in that bubble. And then if I want Chick Hicks as my second candidate, but I accidentally fill in the same bubble on the first choice row, this can result in my ballot actually being invalidated. It can be thrown out because I improperly fill it out. Now, ranked choice voting ballots, they're more difficult than our plurality or majority ballots. So you might see more of these issues pop up when you vote. And further, not only do these difficulties exist, but some evidence suggests that these difficulties may be worse for those who already have a harder time voting, for example, those with lower education rates. With that said, there is some evidence to suggest this may change with experience. When you first adopt a new voting rule, it might be kind of some hiccups at the beginning, but as you go through an election or two, people start to adapt and figure out how to traverse this system. So another issue that requires voters become informed about multiple candidates. Because you are listing multiple candidates on your ballot, you might want to have a little bit of information about each candidate. This requires a lot of difficulty on the voters' point because they have to then become informed about candidates 1 through 5 or whatever their preferences are. Now, with that being said, you actually don't have to rank more than one candidate. You can vote for a single candidate if you like. Say you don't like any of the candidates, you can stop at 1 or however many you want. I also mentioned earlier that RCV can save some money by not requiring runoff elections. At the same time, there could be some pretty high startup costs of ranked choice voting. For example, you might have to print off new ballots, get new ballot tallying machines, new equipment, and things along those lines. So in this sense, ranked choice voting, it's very much of an upfront investment that has the potential to pay off over time by the elimination of those runoff elections. Last, kind of the biggest claim against ranked choice voting is this idea of ballot exhaustion. Now, ballot exhaustion occurs when you've ranked all the candidates you're allowed to rank. Say there's 10 candidates on the field, they let you rank 5, you rank all 5 of those, but all 5 of your candidates get eliminated before the final round. This means that in the final round of voting, your vote basically no longer is influencing the election. That's ballot exhaustion. Now, when you have ballot exhaustion, it can result in having an unfavored winner or a winner who would not have won in every head-to-head match. For example, as we saw earlier, candidate A beat candidate B and candidate C. You can have it to where candidate A would beat candidate B, but not candidate C, but candidate A still wins because of that ballot exhaustion issue. So asked, how can election officials help with ranked choice voting? The biggest thing that election officials can do is provide education to voters to try to reduce some of the negative effects of ranked choice voting. So first, provide sample ballots online. If you institute ranked choice voting at the county level, have sample ballots on the county clerk's website. Or if you do it at the local level, same exact thing. Anywhere where voters go to understand if they're registered, where the polling places are, get voter information, if you provide sample ballots, this will really help individuals become familiar with the voting process. We also send out informational pamphlets ahead of time so voters can see how ranked choice voting works and how their ballots look so they get familiar with it. And of course, you can try training poll workers to be more familiar with ranked choice voting, make sure that they can assist voters who have questions. Poll workers really are the street level bureaucrats of elections. And if a voter has an issue, that's who they go to. So it's important that poll workers understand how to use these ranked choice voting ballots so they can assist their voters. Anyways, that's all that I've got for you today. I have some additional sources here if you want to dive more into ranked choice voting. I want to point out this one article called What We Know About Ranked Choice Voting. If you are about to vote on ranked choice voting, you want to know more about it, you're an election official, I highly suggest checking out this resource. It covers a lot of the emerging literature on ranked choice voting in recent years. Anyways, thank you for your time. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to shoot me an email, follow me on Twitter, get all the election updates.
Thank you so much, Joseph. That was a really, really good, quick summary of what ranked choice voting is. And now that we have time to go a bit more in depth into what ranked choice voting is, maybe we can start with going over where ranked choice voting, the idea for ranked choice voting came from, and how did it start being implemented here in the United States or in other countries as well, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so ranked choice voting, we have some evidence that ranked choice voting, at least the idea of it, kind of really started to surface as early as the 13th century, but it wasn't until about the 19th or 20th century that ranked choice voting style elections really became widespread and started to become empirically examined, mostly abroad, but there has been some adoption in the United States. Some states, localities, and cities have adopted ranked choice voting and then repealed it, or they've adopted and kept it on. But for the most part, it's not too popular in the U.S. yet.
Mm. All right. And so how has ranked choice voting started to be implemented in other states? And have their voter turnout increased at all with ranked choice voting? What has been the effect?
Yeah, so it's very difficult to assess how well ranked choice voting has worked elsewhere, particularly in regards to turnout effects, because ranked choice voting is used predominantly in low turnout municipal elections. And so it's really hard to gauge the effect it's having if you usually don't have a lot of people turn out anyways. And further, a lot of these elections are also nonpartisan, which makes it difficult to compare these elections to, say, a federal election or a general election. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, some work does suggest that replacing, for example, the primary system and the runoff system with ranked choice voting could increase turnout. But it's unclear whether or not this increase was due to changes in election timing versus ranked choice voting in and of itself. Some of my own work suggests that there's some evidence, very preliminary, to suggest that ranked choice voting can increase youth voter turnout, but more work needs to be done in this area to really examine it. A big issue is that ranked choice voting has not been in the United States for all that long, and not a lot of places have it. And so it makes it difficult to really tease out the effects of ranked choice voting.
Right, and what do you know what is the largest election that has used ranked choice voting to date?
Ooh, that's a good question. Mm-hmm. There's a number of large cities in California, and then as well as like Minneapolis and Minnesota that use ranked choice voting. San Francisco, I know, has RCV, and a couple of the California cities are probably the largest. There's also Alaska had a primary. Maine, I think, used it just recently in the 2020 election. So those are probably some of the largest that we've been seeing.
That concludes a portion of a longer presentation from the Old State House in Hartford. You heard first Mariana Garcia and Joseph Cowell from the University of the South, the expert on ranked choice voting. For further information on what you heard on the broadcast once again today, call us at 860-346-1049. That's 860-346-1049. Or you can email us, office@wihsradio.org. That's office@wihsradio.org. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.